On Saturday the 6th of February 2021, the emergency services were called to Willesden Lane in Kilburn at 5:40 p.m. following reports of a stabbing. Upon their arrival, officers found a 22-year-old man fatally stabbed and performed CPR until the arrival of the paramedics. He was taken to a nearby hospital in central London, but despite the best efforts from the emergency services, he later died in hospital. A 16-year-old boy who was a friend of the 22-year-old was also found suffering from stab injuries, but managed to get to safety after fleeing into a supermarket on the street. The victim was identified as Sven Badzak, a 22-year-old from Maida Hill in West London. He was a former pupil who was privately educated at Portland Place School, as well as Wetherby School in Notting Hill, which was also attended by Prince William and Prince Harry, before later attending Roehampton University. Sven, who at the time of his death was working for his father's construction company, had aspirations to do a law conversion course. Sven's mother, Jasna Badzak, a consultant and financial analyst, said that her son was the most polite person you could possibly imagine and had such a strong personality. He was headhunted by modelling agencies, however he found it very superficial and instead was planning on becoming a lawyer. After the Grenfell fire happened, he emptied his wardrobe to donate his clothes. He went there and asked what he could do to help, as he just wanted to help people. The grieving mother told how her polite and charming son had been in the Willesden Lane area to buy her some orange juice and to get himself a bagel, only to be stabbed to death by strangers in an unprovoked attack. She said, "Sven was the person everyone was saying was going to be the Prime Minister. He was a child who would never raise a hand unless he was going to lift you up. He was that charming, spoke with a perfect voice, and no one could shut him up in an argument. He had a lifetime of opportunities in front of him. I keep expecting him to come through the door. I want him in my home and to never be away from me." She called on Boris Johnson, for whom she campaigned during the 2008 London mayoral race, to help get justice for Sven. Her son had met with Boris Johnson and former Prime Minister David Cameron at an event in Queen's Park in 2010 through her campaigning work with the political party, as she was formerly the chair of the local Conservative Association. When asked what she would say to Boris Johnson, she said, "This is the child and his mother who helped you get elected. You knew Sven. You were high-fiving him as your mate. I want to hear from him, from Cameron, from Osborne. He's known Sven for a long time. He knows what kind of child he was." The Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, said his thoughts were with Sven's mother and her family in mourning the loss of her son. He pledged to do more to prevent young people from being sucked into the nihilistic gang culture, and said there had been a big fall in crime figures, but that would be no consolation to a grieving mother. At the early stage of the investigation, detectives believed that Sven and his 16-year-old friend became involved in an altercation with a group of males, and were attacked as they fled from the group who chased after the pair. Detective Chief Inspector Darren Jones said that as the group chased the pair, Sven and his friend became separated, and Sven was attacked by a number of the group after he fell to the ground. His friend was also attacked by the group, but managed to seek sanctuary in a shop, and despite suffering multiple stab injuries, he remained in a critical yet stable condition at hospital. In a statement released by the Metropolitan Police, he said that their thoughts were with both families of the victims, who must have been enduring unimaginable pain at the time. They assured them that they would support them throughout this investigation, and that they would be working tirelessly to locate and apprehend those responsible for the horrific attack. Chief Inspector Guy Elwood from the North West Basic Command Unit described it as a barbaric attack in a public space, saying that it had shocked the community, and as a result they'd be dedicating more officers on the streets over the coming days. A post-mortem examination that took place at Northwick Park Mortuary confirmed that Sven had died from multiple stab wounds, as he was stabbed through his ventricular wall, which opened all the veins for his blood to go to into his lungs. 3 days after the incident, a 17-year-old was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Sven Badzak and was being held in custody at an East London police station. The following day, a second teenager, aged 19, was also arrested on suspicion of murdering Sven Badzak and was subsequently taken into custody and questioned by detectives. The two teenagers who were arrested on suspicion of murder were both released on bail. The victims didn't know their attackers, and the police do not believe that the pair were robbed. The Metropolitan Police have suggested that Sven was killed in a random act of violence as he waited outside of a bagel shop with his friend. Detective Chief Inspector Mark Wrigley said that the attack was unprovoked and happened very quickly. He said that there were 6 people in total involved in the attack, 2 of which were currently on bail after their arrest, and that they were still conducting their inquiries to confirm the identities of all of those involved. He stated that this was a group of young men, consisting of white and black males, that had come to that area and moved together as a group before the offence. Over the next week, police made 2 more arrests in connection with the murder. On Sunday the 14th of February 2021, a 20-year-old was arrested, and the following day a 19-year-old was also detained, and both were held in custody. All 4 men arrested in connection with the murder were later bailed due to return on a date in late March. On Friday the 5th of March 2021, 1 month on from the murder, a 5th man was arrested on suspicion of murder. Jasna Badzak, who lives in Maida Vale, is working on Sven's Law, a campaign which could see anyone caught with a knife or gun sentenced to a minimum of 5 years in jail. She said, "I'm constantly devastated. Sven's death is the only thing I can think about. I can't believe it happened. I think what I was doing a month ago when he was alive, what I could have done to prevent it, which is nothing. So now we are going to launch a campaign to simply end it. It has to end. Next is you. Next is your child." Jasna, former chair of the local Conservative Association, has called on Sean Bailey, Conservative London mayoral candidate, and the Prime Minister at the time Boris Johnson to support the campaign. She was working with Stephen Vulo QC on a legal framework and believed a stop and search is part of the solution. "We want to treat knife and gun crime the same. If you were caught carrying a gun, you get a mandatory sentence of 5 years. For knives, it's far too lenient. They feel they own the streets." While speaking about seeing her son at the Northwick Park mortuary last month, she said, "Because it was a murder, it was the most horrible thing you can experience because he was behind the glass. You can't touch, you can't hug. I kept apologising to him. I was crying obviously, then his father collapsed on the ground. Sven was kind-hearted, extremely polite and generous. The only option I have is getting his killers in jail forever." On Wednesday the 10th of March 2021, the 20-year-old man who was the third to be arrested was charged with the murder of Sven Badzak and the attempted murder of the 16-year-old. The 20-year-old was identified as Rashid Goodell of Fenham Gardens in Goodmays, and he was due to appear at Barkingside Magistrates Court the following day. A week on from the first man being charged, 22-year-old Shivo Ambersley of Matthews Close was the second man to be charged with murdering the aspiring lawyer. He appeared in custody at Willesden Magistrates Court and was remanded to appear at the Old Bailey at the end of the week. He was also charged with the attempted murder of the 16-year-old boy. 4 men were arrested on Tuesday the 20th of April 2021 on suspicion of murder, bringing the total number of arrests in connection with the incident to 9. A 17-year-old was subsequently bailed to return in late May, and 18, 20 and 23-year-olds were released under investigation. A 16-year-old male appeared at Willesden Magistrates Court on Friday the 17th of September 2021, charged with the murder and the attempted murder of a 16-year-old boy. 1 year on from the murder of Sven Badzak in Kilburn, detectives investigating the murder released images of 2 males that were captured near the scene shortly before the attack, who they wished to speak to in connection with their inquiries. Although 3 males had already been charged, the police investigation was far from over, with detectives believing a number of suspects are outstanding. Detective Chief Inspector Mark Rogers from the Met Specialist Crime Command said, "More than a year has passed since this horrific incident that took a young man from his family, and our investigation remains ongoing. Sven's family deserve justice, and we will not rest until we identify those responsible and bring them all before the courts. We would ask anyone, especially those in Kilburn and the wider area near where the incident took place, to take a careful look at these images to check whether you know who these males are, and if you saw them in the vicinity of Willesden Lane on the 6th of February 2021. On Sunday, on the anniversary of his death, police took Jasna Badzak to the street and showed her where her son was attacked and died. She said, "Police were there with me on Sunday at 5:38 PM and showed me where he was attacked. Baby Bagel, that shop, no longer exists. It's a restaurant now. They showed me the location where he fell. He made 3 steps trying to run away." Last August, Jasna was given the post-mortem results of her son after telling police that she demanded to know. She said he was stabbed through his ventricular wall, which opened all the veins for his blood to go into his lungs. It was a rapid death. Only 200 millilitres of blood remained in his body. I fell apart completely, especially after reading the post-mortem. I just couldn't believe it. I had a vision in my head that if I came there I would save his life, and that's why I kept apologising to him, because Mummy was always there, as a mummy and as someone who knows medicine. So it was one thing he never worried about. If something ever happened, she is there. Then you realise that there's 0.1 chance I could have done something, but he would still be brain damaged. The former chair of the local Conservative Association said that she would start working on her campaign Sven's Law after her son's killers have been convicted. She said, "I'm adamant it must be done. Nobody is ever going to persuade me that knives are carried for self-defence. A knife is an offensive weapon. Sven was the kindest, most intelligent person. He always wanted to help others. He was polite and never made a fuss. I'm trying to understand why he won't come through the door, because I still wait for him. As a mother, you can't accept it. 3 people have been charged in relation to the incident, but the police investigation continues, as detectives believe a number of others may have been involved. The 3 defendants who had been charged were due to go on trial at the Old Bailey, however the case was postponed due to the Criminal Bar Association's industrial action. Rashid Goodell, 21, from Ilford, Shiro Ambersley, 22, from Wembley, and Harvey Canavan, 18, of Maida Vale, were accused of murder, attempted murder, and an alternative charge of wounding with intent. The 3 have spent 16 months in custody ahead of their scheduled 4-week trial, which had been due to start on Monday the 18th of July 2022 at the Old Bailey. Further trial interruptions were expected, due in part to defence barristers' no returns policy and booked holidays. Prosecutor Anthony Orchard, QC, told the court, "The victims and their families appear to have been forgotten. They are distraught at the thought of having to wait yet longer for resolution and finality, potentially 10 to 11 months. They have great feelings of frustration and outrage. They understand COVID and the delays, but enough is enough." Judge Neil Flewitt, QC, said it would not be fair to the defendants or jury to continue with a trial knowing it would be interrupted for weeks. Judge Flewitt adjourned the case until the 5th of June 2023 and said if an earlier date were to become available then the case could be brought forward. He explained counsel could not be criticised for booking their holidays when they did, because if the trial had started when planned it would not have been an issue. Sven's mother Jasna said that it was outrageous that the trial had been delayed for nearly a year amid strikes. On Monday the 5th of June 2023, the trial at the Old Bailey began for 22-year-old Sven Badzak, who was brutally murdered in Kilburn, along with the attempted murder of his 16-year-old friend. Rashid Goodell and Shiro Ambersley both denied the charges, and the 3rd defendant, Harvey Canavan, pleaded guilty to manslaughter and unlawful wounding on the first day of the trial. In the early evening of Saturday the 6th of February 2021, 22-year-old law student Sven Badzak and his 16-year-old friend were walking home on a busy West London high street after a trip to the supermarket. Prior to this, 2 of the defendants, Goodell and Ambersley, walked into a bakery on Kilburn High Road in Kilburn and were seen to stare at 2 females who were standing at the counter before leaving without buying anything. Detectives believe that this was an indication that they were actively looking for someone to attack. Sven and his friend were walking along the same road, with his friend watching a football match on his phone. Unbeknownst to them, Goodell was fast approaching from behind. As Goodell got closer to the pair, he was joined by Ambersley and Canavan, who, until that point, had been on the other side of the road. When they reached the pair, they were heard to say, "What are you on?" before stabbing Sven in the chest and the second victim in his back. Sven managed to run a short distance before collapsing in the street, when the defendants reportedly attacked him further, punching and kicking him. Following their attack on Sven, they began to chase the second victim who had run from the scene. He was able to reach a supermarket and seek help, and the suspects gave up on the chase and ran from the scene. An investigation was launched by detectives from the Specialist Crime Command, where diligent and thorough inquiries were carried out. Painstaking phone and CCTV work took place to place the defendants at the scene of the murder, ultimately leading to their arrest in the following weeks. Sven and his friend were attacked in a gang-style attack over what the killers regarded as their drug territory, in an apparent case of mistaken identity. Within 5 weeks, Geddel and Ambersley had been charged, with Canavan being charged in September 2021. On Friday the 7th of July 2023, Rashid Geddel and Shiro Ambersley were convicted of murdering 22-year-old law student Sven Badzak, who they brutally attacked in an apparent case of mistaken identity. The pair were both also convicted of a Section 18 GBH against a then 16-year-old male. 19-year-old Harvey Canavan of Walterton Road had pleaded guilty on the first day of trial to Sven's manslaughter, which was accepted by the jury. Detective Inspector John Marriott from the Specialist Crime North said, "My thoughts today are with the family and friends of Sven, who lost his life needlessly at the hands of these men. Nothing will ever bring Sven back to them, but I hope that they can take some small comfort from the fact that 3 of his attackers have been brought to justice and will now face a significant part of their lives behind bars. I would also like to praise the bravery of the second victim attacked that night. The courage he has shown in facing his attackers has enabled us to bring this prosecution and secure justice. None of the defendants have shown any remorse for their actions, with Rashid Geddel even boasting about the incident on his social media accounts in the days that followed the murder. It's clear the group went out that evening intent on carrying out serious violence. Armed with knives, they roamed the streets seemingly looking for victims. Devastatingly, Sven and his friend became their targets, in what we believe was a case of mistaken identity, as they suspected them to be members of a rival gang. They were not. They were simply 2 friends who were walking home after a trip to the shop. Police are still searching for 2 males, who they want to speak to in connection with the murder, following a CCTV appeal in February 2022. Speaking ahead of the sentencing, Mr. Badzak's mother criticised the Metropolitan Police's handling of the case. Jasna Badzak, who was previously a protected witness in 2 trials of war criminals at The Hague after fleeing her native Yugoslavia, said that putting criminals behind bars in The Hague was a piece of cake compared with dealing with the Metropolitan Police. Jasna watched the sentencing online, and in a witness statement read out loud, she said that her son was the kindest person to walk the earth. She said, "For me, Sven was everything, my reason to live, my only child, more than the apple of my eye, my love, my full support, my best friend." She earlier told Times Radio of her experience dealing with the Met Police. "It was horrendous for us. They were saying that it was gang-related violence, implying that Sven was a gangster." She added that it became a problem for police to get CCTV and that they were very reluctant to do that. The mother of the 16-year-old said in a witness statement her son had been suffering mentally with PTSD, night terrors, flashbacks, and has withdrawn completely socially. On Thursday the 3rd of August 2023, 22-year-old Rashid Geddel and 23-year-old Shiro Ambersley were both jailed for 27 years for the murder of Sven Badzak, and were also jailed for 12 years to run concurrently for wounding with intent. The third defendant, 19-year-old Harvey Canavan, was sentenced to 7.5 years for manslaughter and 15 months to run concurrently for unlawful wounding. And that brings to a close the horrific case of Sven Badzak, who was tragically taken from his loving family and friends at just 22 years old. Lawless Underground would wish to extend its sincere condolences to the loved ones of Sven. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to Lawless Underground for more crime-related content. If you have any suggestions or requests for future videos, then please let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, and goodbye for now from Lawless Underground.